I love the way Liliana just falls into the river and Priscilla is just like watching and not doing anything and like praising Liliana as Liliana is about to drown. Like everyone is like trying to help Liliana and Priscilla's just like standing there as Liliana is sinking. It's just like, Priscilla, can you be a bit more, proactive? Now, to be fair, it's probably because Priscilla knew that Liliana would be saved, because that's sort of like Priscilla's whole thing, the idea that the world is made in her favor. Now, as you can imagine, the whole point of this episode was to sort of investigate Liliana's character and sort of see her upbringing. Now, this is something ReZero does excellently. Like in other anime, you'll see these side characters, you don't really see their backstory, you just sort of get to know them, you get a flashback scene, whatever. But in ReZero, it's fleshed out. We see their sort of entire life journey. We've seen this in Season 2 with Otto, and we've seen this in Season 1 with Rem and Ram, but ReZero does it excellently. And it's always a treat when we have a named episode which focuses around a certain character, in this case Liliana. Now, there was quite a lot of sort of, I guess, lore drops, is the fact that, for example, Reed was mentioned 2 different times, and Flugel was also mentioned by Liliana when she's crawling on the ground. Now, the reason why these people are important is because these are individuals that took a unique journey in their life. And Liliana is someone that wants to sort of imitate that and go on her own journey. And this is the sort of reason why she runs away from home. She wants to become, the king of the minstrels and be the best bard ever. And so she leaves home. And Tappei did state that her family didn't even really look for her after she ran away, because Liliana was old enough to sort of make that own decision for herself, and that's what Liliana did. And what we can see is that Liliana wants to emulate people like Reed and Flugel. Now, of course, if you're anime only, you don't really know who Reed is, nor would you really know who Flugel is. But you should remember the name Flugel from the Flugel tree in Season 1, and that is what Subaru chopped down essentially to crush the white whale and win the fight. So again, this is what I'm talking about when I say ReZero really does put these little throwaway lines which are connecting the sort of lore of the world. So we know this Flugel figure must be really, really important. Also, what I've noticed is that there seems to be a greater love for Liliana than what web novel readers sort of experienced. You need to understand, as a web novel reader, Liliana was quite possibly the most hated character in ReZero, and I did make a video about this, by the way. But in the anime, they sort of transformed the Liliana from a sort of a really unlikable, annoying character to someone that's actually quite respectable and someone that, people do cheer for. Not only that, by the way, Priscilla actually does praise Liliana, and this is something quite important because Priscilla doesn't really praise people, and when she does praise you, that means that you've really impressed her, and it's actually quite a generous thing to happen for Priscilla to actually give you a compliment. Now let's get to Priscilla's fight with Sirius. Now, what people don't really know is that Priscilla is known as the Sun Princess, and what we see is that Liliana also sort of has her sort of development when she's in the lake and she sees the sort of sun shining down on her. It's a nice, beautiful sort of area, and that's a link with Priscilla and Liliana. They're both sort of in the sun in a way, so that's a really nice thematic link between them. But let's get to Priscilla. Once again, Sirius tries to goad Priscilla by mentioning Iris and the Thorn King, and I have made a video about this if you want to spoil yourself and look at the story of Iris and the King of Thorns, so you can go watch that if you want. However, what we see is that Priscilla can't really take damage physically. If she takes damage, that damage is then sort of moved towards one of her personal belongings, the jewels. And this is really good because Sirius actually does explain it as well. Because I know there's some people that watch ReZero on 2x speed and they don't really understand what's going on, and so they're thinking, oh, what ability is this? Why is the jewels breaking apart? What's going on? And thank you to Sirius for explaining how the mechanic works. So Priscilla is really strong, and Tappei actually did reveal on Twitter that Priscilla has the highest combat ability out of all of the royal candidates. which sort of matches Sirius, because Sirius also has a very high combat ability. Of course, we also see that the Sin Archbishop of Wrath gets beaten by Priscilla in this episode, and what's really notable is that, as mentioned, Priscilla seems to be unaffected by the authority of Wrath, and when she slashes Sirius, even Sirius is sort of confused, like, why are you not affected? And of course that's something that will be explored about in the future, of course. Now, what's really important is the weapon Priscilla uses, the Yang Sword. The Yang Sword essentially allows Priscilla to burn or cut whatever she wants. So things like hostages don't really work on her, because she can just burn you and leave the hostage unharmed. Either way, Sirius survives by the skin of her teeth, or at least it's implied that she survives, because Priscilla says that, you know, it's gotten dark now, so she couldn't really finish off Sirius. For those that don't really understand why that is, and that's because the Yang Sword and also Priscilla, they are stronger when there is light. And because now it's really dark time, their powers have weakened. And so for that reason, the Yang Sword loses its shine. And that's something that some people might have missed, which meant that the Yang Sword itself is weaker, and thereby Priscilla is also weaker. So for those wondering, oh, why didn't Priscilla just, you know, kill Sirius? It's because she's actually a lot weaker now, because it's darker. Once again, there were after credit scenes. This time it's Subaru explaining the sort of star names which the Sin Archbishops have, and how they sort of link to the authorities that the Sin Archbishops have. And of course Subaru sort of explains this to Regulus, but Regulus sort of gets tired and starts attacking Subaru. And this is, by the way, why you should really watch the after credit scene. And we can see Emilia is running towards the Little Kingdom, which is of course where the wives are, which sort of shows the sort of link between Regulus's authority and the wives, so there must be a sort of connection there. Either way, Subaru is going to be confronting Regulus. Hopefully we'll get that next episode, because we've had the culmination of Priscilla and Sirius. So that's one Sin Archbishop down. We just have to deal with Regulus now, Capella, and of course Gluttony. So we're gonna get those over the next few episodes. Overall, it was a good episode. I did feel like the animation was a bit stiff in some areas, like when Priscilla sort of standing there, like batting away the chains from Sirius. It's just sort of the same animation over and over again, repeated. I felt like it could have went a bit more in depth. I do know that last week's episode took apparently around a year and a half to make, and of course they can't do that for every episode, so I understand that's the reason why the animation was a bit less great this episode. But if you like ReZero content, feel free to like and subscribe, because I'm going to be making a lot more ReZero content over the coming days.